Hello, welcome back to Life with Soul. I'm your host, Melissa Giller. I'm so excited to share my guest's incredible story with you today. Let me introduce you all to Wendy Lopez. Wendy has been on her own healing journey from lost and desperate to empowered and courageous since 2014. She was in a loveless marriage based only on a common religion until the birth of her first child awakened something powerful within her that she could not deny. Each subsequent pregnancy and miscarriage awoke her in different levels. She divorced her husband, faced religious peer pressure and family disownment that left her completely alone in the world. An inner knowing and never say die attitude kept her moving forward and believing in herself against all odds. Along her healing journey, she has learned to embrace her inner beauty, that she is more than enough, and that she has actually been perfect all along amidst the chaos. She's reached a deep sense of peace and no longer feels driven to chase after anything or anyone. She's found everything she needs to thrive inside of herself. Ooh. After leaving her corporate career of 24 years, Wendy has shifted her life's work to guiding and empowering women who are lost and desperate from past pain, narcissistic relationships, and abuse, and has taught them to heal, find their own inner strength and beauty. Oh, wow. I'm so honored to have you here today. Thank you for being here, Wendy.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes.
Yes.
You have quite the tale to tell. So we're going to let you jump into that. I ask all of my guests when they first sign on with me, first a question. It usually still ends up coming out in the topics anyways that we discuss, but
Mhm.
I'm curious, what does a life with soul mean to you?
Mm. Well, it's to think about it and to feel it. Life with soul to me would be life with being real, pure, and just authenticity. And as we discussed, in my, uh, bio, my experiences in getting here, I was none of that.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't living life with soul. I was living a life that, like it mentioned, my experience was a loveless marriage that was almost prearranged, but just for the fact that I can choose who I wanted to be with, but it had to be in that same religion.
Mm-hmm.
And unbeknownst to me, at that time, I was only 19, and I'm 49 now. And
Okay.
at 19, you just follow
Mm-hmm.
what your parents tell you. And I'm sure they were coming from the goodness of their heart. I was very sheltered. They knew there was a lot of darkness in the world, and religion speaks a lot about, staying in the righteous path. And so I did that. I did everything that my parents wanted me to be, the happiness that they wanted me to have, and it caused me to be inauthentic to myself
Mm-hmm.
because I'm living a life that they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, it's not coming from my soul. So it would relate to that loveless marriage,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's not that feeling of love. It was more, okay, this is where they want me to feel safe. They want me to have a safe marriage, and they want me to be safe, like have a safe family
Mm-hmm.
without experiencing, one of the things in religion is they don't believe in divorce. Um, they don't believe in the mother having her own identity. It's following what a mother should be, how she should be with her children, how she should be with the husband. So that's all completely out of
Yeah.
my own
Outside.
soul. Yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
is outside of my soul. That's not from my soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so walking that proper alignment, being proper, right? Having a proper image, having that proper family. Um, and it's that righteous path without being able to make any mistake, created a really thick layer of perfectionism.
Right. No doubt. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it gave me no room for error. And that created a lot of questions after I had my first son,
Mm.
which was
Just
really unlikely to happen. I mean, you wouldn't think that would happen when you have a child.
I have a theory on this actually. I'm curious
Mhm.
because I know in my own life, like where I face a lot of perfectionism is in emotional perfectionism, right?
Mhm.
And I think when you are that new mom, you got nowhere to hide. Like you're feeling all of the things and feeling things you've never experienced before. And it's like kind of this tapping open, unleashing of all of this experience and feelings, I feel like, and just all of that, the past repression, I feel like,
Mhm.
has that opportunity to come out. Did you experience that as well? I would assume not being able to really share how you felt. Um, if you were in a loveless marriage, that would kind of speak to that, I would think, like you weren't able to really express yourself, what you wanted, truly be safe, stay safe, play safe. Like it would just feel so restrictive. Yeah.
Right. And and in fairness to my ex-husband, he was doing the same thing.
Mm,
He was following
yes.
also that path, you see. So we were both out of alignment. We weren't living soulfully because we both were following that same ideal perfectionism of what his parents thought he should be.
Hmm.
And
Right.
so we were like this perfect union
Hmm.
that, the outside world could see that it would be a perfect union. But he's trying to fulfill this perfect image. I'm trying to fulfill a perfect image. And then having the child is where that realness set in,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? So when you have a child, it's like you can't fake being a mom. You have to really delve into who you are as a mom,
Right.
right? And who was that?
Hmm. Yeah. And that is such a personal journey. I feel like we don't talk about enough on how maybe that does impact a marriage when, and especially in what sounds like a traditional type of culture, you would have been probably the primetime parent, always,
Hmm.
mom on duty, right? And
Yeah,
really
right.
at the helm. And so that was truly an experience you were fully immersed in, and a very different experience than what your male counterpart would have had to be immersed in. And I just don't think that that level of appreciation is sometimes
Hmm.
there. I'm curious if, after all that you two went through, was your husband, did he get to kind of this self-aware place where he was able to notice the perfectionism in his patterns as well, or was that more just your journey?
I believe he I believe he did have some type of awareness where he pulled away from the church.
Mm,
I pulled away from the church. But it just went to the extent of him being able to decide who he can marry.
right.
So his second wife is not part of the religion,
Mm,
right? And so I remarried, and he's not part of the religion.
right.
But I went on a deeper journey because when I had my third son from my second marriage,
Mm,
uh, that's when I really felt like I was having a midlife crisis.
mm,
I
mm,
started questioning my identity, who I've been as a mother with my past two children,
right.
and how available have I been as a mother. And if working a 9 to 5 job, 40 hours a week until I was 65, if that was my life.
Mm,
So when I had this questioning, it's like an egg broke within me. And so all this stuff started oozing out that I was freaking out because now you're talking about I've done this work. I've been in management for 24 years in the medical industry. This
Mm,
is my bread and butter. This is what I do. I attached my identity, my worth to my paycheck.
right. Of course. Yeah.
And so when I had my third child, my third son, he was a blessing because it's where a deeper awakening set in. And I started noticing that I was just falling apart.
Mm,
My mind was uh, riddled with anxiety. My body was riddled with anxiety. And when I was working, all I can think was, is this where all my time goes at work? And I don't understand. Like I started questioning, like, I don't understand what life is about. If we're about family
mhm.
and, the church teaches about family, how is it that I'm outside of the home all these hours and I only get to see them in the evening? I mean, where's that quality time?
Right.
Where is that bonding? Where it's almost like there was this, when the egg broke, it was like a volcano of emotions and feelings.
Hmm. Yeah.
And what do you do with that? And that's why I attribute it. It's kind of like a midlife crisis when people are going through something. It's their soul letting them know, hey, this isn't working anymore, and you
Yeah.
need to figure out a new way to do something,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. I can relate so much from my own personal experience. But I really do feel that those moments and to know when you're in alignment, it's because you've been so deeply out of alignment or living a life
Hmm.
without soul that you really do know the difference once you're in it. Do you think that this kind of midlife crisis for you was because you were finally able to sort of make your own decisions and make those choices for yourself, like you were free and safe to do that, that it all kind of came crashing down as that now you can rewrite your life, like you can,
Right, right. And that's a
you can
that's a good
choose.
observation. Yes, I remember um, when I was dating my husband at the time, and I decided that we were going to get married or even live it together. I remember I made a conscious decision that I wanted to do therapy
Mm.
because it was like, I don't want to jump into another relationship and have like that same problem. But again, that's that perfectionism in the back of my mind, right?
Mhm.
Being that perfect wife, not
Yeah.
wanting to have another failed marriage.
And bring in
So,
my problems,
yes,
like I'm some sort of
right.
bad person. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we carry all of that with us. And that was the reason why I started therapy. And I realized that after 3 months, she told me I was fine. I was like, I'm fine. I don't think I'm fine. I think I need more help.
Mhm.
And so I feel like moms can really portray as they got their stuff together.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I wasn't a basket miss per se, but my emotional life was.
Mhm.
It was just really distraught. And it's all because I still had this other, my third child, and I felt like I still couldn't give him all the love that he deserved. And that
Yeah.
came from the lack of love of myself.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I was in search of that, which I didn't understand. And I remember I went to a class. It was at a metaphysical store where they sell crystals and oracle cards, and they gave a class of about abundance. And I thought, well, I would love to have more abundance. And so I went to the class, and the teacher that taught the class, she just had like this amazing energy. And I was like, I don't know what she has, but that's what I want.
Yeah. If that's abundance, I want
Yeah,
it.
right. And so
Yeah.
abundance comes in different forms.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't realize, like, until you just said that, like, so what I was after really was the abundant of energy she had,
Mm,
because I felt mine was limited.
mm,
So when I approached her, I said, hey, do you do like private coaching? And she said, yes. So I said, I don't even know if she used a modality or if it was just her own technique. I don't know
mm.
what, but I just said, well, sign me up. I want to work with you. So I
Wow.
did. I worked 6 months with her and I absolutely loved it. And I
Cool.
continued to work with her for another 18 months.
Wow.
So I really delved into this soul life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Love
And
it.
that's where I found me. That was the beginning, okay? Because it's a
Mm-hmm.
process. Your
Yeah, of
soul
course.
life is a process, right? Because it's soul evolution,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's a continual process. And the process really is for us to find who we really are, um, bring in more compassion for ourselves, bring in more forgiveness, and bring in more self love.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's the
Amen.
abundance I was seeking. That's the abundance that I was
Yeah,
after, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So work then became, since I had tied my worth to work, um, you could have paid me because I even told myself when I was working, my boss, when I would quit, every time I would be like, I'm quitting, he would offer me more money.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, okay. So I would stay. And that's how he kept me there. So it had been quite a
So
few
never
times.
actually paying what you were worth then, because if that monetary value could change at the drop of a hat, then you were never earning what you could have earned
Yes,
potentially from him, correct? Yeah.
correct. Yes. So so it came to a point where my inner being
Mm-hmm.
said, there's no much money he can give you.
Yeah.
He can't fill that for you. And so then I had that thought and I thought, wow, so if I give my notice again, I have to be really serious about it. And I can't tinker with, okay, you can buy my happiness or you
Mm-hmm.
can buy me for another 2 years. That's what I was allowing him to do,
Yeah.
right? You can
Yeah.
buy me. And I think a lot of us allow that to happen because we don't know the difference. And I always say, have compassion for yourself because at that time, that was the light and the knowledge and wisdom you were operating from,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right? But when you start really questioning your life, when your soul is starting to guide you into your own authentic life, um, those things that people would probably, uh, dangle a carrot or give you something monetarily to have you stay, because this happens with relationships,
Mm-hmm. Right.
you fall for it because the conviction in your own authenticity, your authentic life, your soul life, because your soul, you have to, in order to have a soul life, I'm sorry, you have to see the realness in you.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Absolutely.
have to you have to come in to that space of permission to allow you to be authentic.
Mm. Yeah. I love that. The permission to be all the shades that you are, the light and the
Mm-hmm.
dark and the shadows and as you said, the soul growth, like growth isn't linear. So you
Right,
have to have
right.
self-compassion because you are going to
Yes.
mess up again. Or people always say, like, oh, why am I dealing with this again? Or it's,
Hmm.
round 3, round 30, this lesson.
I
Um,
know.
yeah, and that's where it's in that messy middle where all the grace and self-compassion is so important because you will get to the other side if you keep going. But
Hmm.
and it's always, I think, in that trust that whatever is on the other side is worth the journey. Because for me, it's just
Yes.
I don't know, personally, I've always had this mentality that, like, why am I here then if it's not worth
Hmm.
it, right? So just
Hmm.
keep going,
Hmm.
keep going, keep going, because it's got to be worth it. It's got to be worth it. That's just, I don't know, something that helps me, I guess. But
Yes.
um I want to link that a little bit back, because when you talk about leaving this, culture and um family, and then being kind
Hmm.
of ostracized by them, and then leaving your job, that required so much self-trust. How do you
Hmm.
think self-trust is developed and especially how can someone develop that when they're in a situation that they need to get out, but they like I see this sometimes that people don't realize that they're in it sometimes, right? But a lot of the times it's just lacking the trust to even know that to admit, give themselves the permission that they want something different, and then to actually go and seek that. What's
Yes,
your advice? What's your
I
advice?
love that. Yes, I'm happy to share my advice because like we were talking about before, all my experience, all my growth. Yes, I do have certifications and they're great, but I really believe that experience trumps all of that.
Totally.
Right. And so the question about trust, having self-trust, absolutely. You know, the leaving the job, taking a stand to leave, kind of like that prearranged marriage, taking a stand to leave the religion, or the organized religion. All of those did require trust. But what I can tell you, what I have learned from other teachers is trust actually comes from self-respect. So if you haven't learned self-respect, you're not going to be able to trust yourself. And that really stems from your inner child.
Yeah. Well, and
right?
you would never trust someone you didn't respect on the exterior,
right?
So
So
that makes
exactly,
sense.
exactly.
Right.
So if you haven't learned that trust with your inner child, and believe me, I want everyone to know that there's different levels of trust. You just don't gain trust overnight. It just doesn't happen. There's stages to trust because there's stages to growth. Right? There's stages to your evolution. So as you trust your growth and your evolution, and you're trusting your decisions, and you're trusting your intuition, the nudges, and as you see the outcomes, look at where it's taken you. Now, I want to go back to when you operate at the light that you had with the wisdom that you had, maybe you trusted yourself and those decisions weren't the greatest.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where we bring compassion, because we didn't know at that time any better. Right?
Yeah.
So as we're in our soul life, we're starting to expand the consciousness. We're starting to expand our spirit. So we're expanding our levels of respect. We're expanding our levels of trust. And that is the beauty of this road. And so as moms, if we're able to do that, wow, the infusion, the injection that you will give your children for them to experience this level of self-trust within themselves, they're less likely for the parent to have to fear that they're going to make mistakes. Because see, the fear the parents have, where we all come from, the anxiety, the stress, the overwhelm, is that we can't control them.
Right. Of course. Yeah, exactly. That's the most anxious places I go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But
what
if
I
we
don't have control. Yeah.
Yes, but you don't have control, and you never will, because they are their own individual person. And whether you like it or not, I'm an example of that. I followed my parents' cookie cutter print.
No, we don't want them to. Yeah, totally.
You don't want them to stray. You don't want them to suffer, right?
But you don't want them to just listen blindly either, right?
Yeah. Right, because they're not learning, they're not growing. And so I did that. I followed their pattern, and then I got married, and then like 10 years later, my life, like for like about 15 years, I was in the dark. But after having my third child, that's when I started questioning like everything that I had been doing. So I did it my parents' way, then I did it my way, and both ways were not functioning. But once I started going into you could call it the soul way or the soul path or the
Hmm.
soul life. Once you aligned yourself with your soul, that's when everything just started putting the pieces together. And so when you
Yes.
start putting the pieces together, there's a new level of trust within yourself.
Hmm. Oh, I love
So,
this so much. Yeah.
yes, so trust is the process. And like I tell
Mhm.
my clients, I really wish I can just have a wand and we can just wipe the slate clean and then we start new. But every day we have the opportunity to be reborn anew.
Mhm.
We get to choose. It's our choice.
Yeah.
And we can choose not,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, things that when I talk with my clients, we focus on too, why would you change what happened to you? Because it's
Mhm.
giving yourself that permission and forgiveness. You need that. You need that growth, right? And so you're not trying to erase it, you're trying to see why it's happened for you, really. And
Mhm.
to I think like the forgiveness and the compassion is the necessary lesson for you to learn,
Mhm.
because that is, as to what you're saying, how we're going to teach that self-respect and increase self-trust in the first place. So there's something else that you said when you talked about choice. And I always I love what you said. Like you have to choose every single day. And I always
Mhm.
like to choose, who am I becoming? Who do I want to become next?
Mhm.
Like this is
Mhm.
me today, and I
Mhm.
have gratitude for that. But stepping into the next piece. And I'm curious, when it comes to trauma in the past and the things that have shaped us, there's a part of us that is victimized by this. There is a part, especially, I
Mhm.
don't know if you know about parts theory, but like when
Mhm.
we have all these parts within us, right? And, these wounded, it relates to the inner child.
Mhm.
We have that wound. And so I think on one hand, we have to be compassionate and acknowledge this
Mhm.
happened to me.
Right.
Um, but we can't sink into being a victim, because that is so
Mhm.
powerless and it has no real benefit.
Mhm. Right.
But
Right.
at the same token, like I said, it seems to be a bit of a balance in some ways of giving grace and compassion without being a victim. So it's kind of just like acknowledging. What do you think? Is it
Mhm.
acknowledging that it happened to you and then choosing different?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because we all have a choice, right?
Mhm.
So it goes to choice and it also goes into how deep do you want to go into your life,
Yeah, true. Yeah.
right? So you have to choose, how much deeper do I want to go? Because what I want to share is with the audience is, yes, when trauma happens to us, an 8-year-old didn't choose the trauma.
Right.
It happened to them. When someone is grieving and the child loses a parent, they didn't choose for that to happen,
Mhm.
right? So the normal construction of the mind, it'll go into that victim mindset, like it happened to me,
Right.
right? And then it becomes um, adapted to all, it's like little veins just start growing into other sectors of their life. And they create all this poor me,
Mhm.
so now it's not just that situation that happened to them. The veins grew into all different aspects of their life, that it actually creates almost like a disability,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I hear
Right.
that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, it could be in the mental. We have mental health, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, Emotional instability.
Yeah.
Um, it's like a spiritual depression, right? When someone is really depressed, like they're just feeling all their emotions and they just don't know how to articulate or release it,
Mhm.
right? And then there's a physical effect from that victim mindset where the body captures and is holding on, and then something manifests in an ailment later,
Right. Yep.
right?
Right.
So, what I want the audience to know is that this is all what happens when we remain in a victim mindset.
Mhm.
So, from a victim mindset, we can go into a survival mindset, meaning, okay, I understand what happened to me, but you know what? I'm above that and I'm going to cross over that line and I'm going to go into I'm a survivor. And you hear people say, like, I'm a
Right.
survivor, right?
Totally.
Right. And so they are. So they become like warriors for their life.
Yeah.
But it's almost like a fight within them that they're never going to go back to what happened to them. But that is a step. Yeah, it's like an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
And so surviving is good because you have been able to get out of the mindset into survivorship, but then you want to get into from survivorship into thriving.
Right.
And that's where in the survivor part, you need to work with the compassion and the forgiveness and the letting go with the mindset and, bringing in more self-love because now in that thriving aspect of yourself, you can give love to the survivor in you
Mm-hmm.
and to the victimization. And when you do that, you gain your own control back.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when you're thriving, guess what? It's again, little veins in all aspects of your life start thriving.
Right. Yes. Oh gosh. I actually have an episode a few ones back about getting out of survival mode. And that's something that I work with a lot of my clients on is when they're
Mm-hmm.
in survival mode. And I always kind of say, like, you're not, when you think about it, like Maslow's hierarchy, even, those base survival needs, or when you just think of the concept of like, I'm just hanging on and surviving and
Mm-hmm.
getting through, you're not going to reach like enlightenment. You're not going to
Right.
reach creativity levels or
Right.
that abundance that we were talking about
Yes.
earlier. And so, yeah, surviving isn't a strategy for
Yeah.
life at all.
No. And people
And I
wear it
think
like
it
a
becomes
badge.
such a, yes, exactly. And it becomes such a protective mechanism and a defensive mechanism, as something to say, like, I can act this way because I'm a survivor and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just, holding on here. It is still a little bit tinged in that victim-y stance in some ways to me, but
Mm-hmm.
I totally just see how this all links together, and I love that idea of the veins because for me, when I think about, again, like the changes in my life and what I've seen with the women I work with, it's when you start to focus on yourself and what you truly desire in this life, and you light that up, you're lit up from within, literally everything changes. Your kids, the relationship with your kids,
Mm-hmm.
with your partner, how you feel about your body, the amount of
Mm-hmm.
self-love that you have on any given day, and the ability to like ride the waves of your emotions.
Right.
Everything
Yes, everything.
changes.
So that's like
Yeah.
with I'm very visual, so I get
Mm-hmm.
images. And it's when I was talking is like I just saw all these veins.
Yeah.
That's where it's like pumping blood to all aspects of your life because we cut off our own oxygen. We cut
Mm-hmm.
off our own flow to our soul life. So if we can trust ourselves to at least go through the process for ourselves, because it's not about anybody else, even though there was people involved in the events, but it's always about ourselves. And so if we can trust ourselves, my mission is for moms to do that so then they build this trusting bond with their children. So the children create the healthy habits, the positive traits, not the negative stuff. Because if we go back, generations back, all it's been negative, 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 negative. If you
Mm-hmm.
hear someone's conversation, you'll hear something negative in the conversation that didn't mean to be negative, but it's a negative connotation that the body will absorb it like a negative trait. And then subconsciously, we act out of all the stuff that we listen to.
Right.
So if we can feel and fuel our own motherness with soul, then we can fuel and inject and transmit that to the children. And that's how we change the generations.
Yeah. Heal yourself and heal the world. That's,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so true. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think like it's your duty as a mother
Mm-hmm.
is how I see it. And I love that this has become almost like such a mainstream topic, breaking patterns, generational
Mm-hmm.
patterns,
Mm-hmm.
ancestral traumas, things like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've had many conversations in this realm recently myself, and I see it everywhere. But I just think that because we know about it, when you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's your job if you are a parent or a caregiver in some capacity to learn your own emotional regulation, to not only like recognize your own triggers, but to then like actually process through them and teach your kids how to do that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's not a skill a lot of us were taught, but it's something
Mm-hmm.
we have to embrace if we're taking on
Mm-hmm.
the very important role of raising
Mm-hmm.
little people.
Yeah, I love that, raising
Yeah.
little people, right?
Yeah.
And we have, like you said, a duty, and it's okay. Like my first two boys, I have three boys. My first two boys didn't get the best of me because the best of me thought at that time that mom needed to provide.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you
And
had to adapt to provide because of the situation you were in. Like there's so many reasons on the back end of it now you can look back and say you made the best decision you could.
I
Yeah.
did,
With
I
total
did, right?
self-compassion.
Yes,
Exactly.
with total self-compassion because I was having a conversation with my son and who's 19 now and and I can honestly tell him that I didn't realize that by me believing that I had to be the provider and having my mom be the caretaker, I basically became like an absent parent. I wasn't there for them. And I didn't see like their school events to be anything significant. Like I had to be there. Well, my parents weren't there for me when I had school events. So it becomes like that becomes your normal, that dysfunction, the
Right.
unavailability, right? The unavailability. My parents weren't available for me for my school functions.
Hmm.
They were available to make money because they wanted to provide for the family. And so I took kind of like that masculine energy and I was like, I'm going to be like, even though I had a husband, but I was like, I'm a mom and I'm a dad.
Yeah.
And I'm going to fulfill all that
Yeah.
stuff because I want to make sure that, my family is provided for, my kids have everything. And
And that's what a
so,
parent does. That's all I've ever seen a
yeah,
parent do, right? So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to touch on that actually, how before we wrap up, because you work with women in regards to a lot of like and narcissistic relationships that they've been
Hmm.
through. And
Yes.
we talked about how we look for the familiar in our
Hmm.
future relationships. So can you just touch on a little bit about how that pattern plays out, and why we need to be conscious of this, and almost like we all have narcissistic tendencies to some degree.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
how do we balance that, focus on self and pursuing our goals and visions, and
Hmm.
also being there for everybody else, and just I don't know. That's so many different areas to go in, but
There is, yes. Uh-huh.
yeah, it's just I'm so curious about I could probably talk to you for 2 hours just about how you work with like narcissistic pasts and things like that.
Yes, and that's yeah, and I love to do it because I didn't realize I was getting all these clients with narcissistic parents, whether it was mom or dad or both, and then it went into the relationships. And so what I want to talk about first is when I work with the clients when, they're having these narcissistic abuse issues that are showing in the relationship. We go and we work with the little self, the little you to see where this is coming from the parent.
Mhm.
Where did they experience it? And usually they tell me, oh, an experience happened with mom or dad. And what I want to share about that is it probably doesn't feel good. And I know I went through this because I had a narcissistic husband. Um, they're actually there to show you strength.
Mm.
And if you can work on yourself and find your new strength, then you have the strength to leave that relationship.
Mhm.
Or you have the strength, in my case, is to work through the relationship, and then I will know when it's time to go.
Right.
Because the relationship, the person that has the narcissistic um, tendencies, just like your parents, you can't change your parents.
Mhm.
You can't change your partner. The only control that you have is changing is in yourself. And how I do that is I work with the inner child and we strengthen the inner child from all the brokenness, the mother wounding or father wounding. And that all allows them to have the process of the adult version of you to feel complete. Because in the narcissistic, uh, the person is trying to fill those voids for them. And they're so demanding, right? It's all about them. And so normally the moms that I work with are very empathic.
Mhm. Yep.
And so they fall into that, entrapment without their knowing. And therefore they've lost their identity in that relationship,
Yeah.
right? So it's pulling back and really working with the inner child within, because if we work with that energy, then we can strengthen the little you and the adult, and then you can stand up for each other.
Mm.
You can back yourself up.
Yeah,
And you
I love
can't, you
that.
can't, yeah, you can't back yourself up if your little one did not know how to stand up for herself. And
Mhm.
usually with parents, we have to go with the flow, or you
Mhm.
get in trouble, or you get
Right.
spanked, right? And you don't have a voice. And if you did have a voice and you tried to stand up for yourself, you probably got a backhand,
Mhm.
or you got in trouble.
Yeah, you got yelled at, sent to your room,
Yeah,
whatever. Even like it
right.
doesn't need to be smacked across the face, but you were told to
Yeah,
be quiet. You
yes,
don't
right,
matter,
right,
essentially. Yeah.
right. And in my case, my clients have had that physical abuse.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it's more extreme. But the beauty of it is you don't have to stay there anymore. Like your physical self no longer has to stay there, because when we're working with the emotional state, the spiritual state, and your mental state, that's strengthening all of your layers of yourself to be able to, one, work through narcissistic relationships and take a stand and take your power back. And usually they're not going to like it.
Hmm.
So then you have to take a stand for your life and see what is the best thing for you. Is that, I believe in magic, and I've always believed in magic since I was little. And that magic is actually inspiration. Does that person inspire you, fulfill you, and compliment you? Or is it depleting you and you're always giving yourself away? And you have to choose what route you want to stay in, because I can't tell you what to do. I can
Hmm.
just guide you and we can release. But in order for you to take a stand, you need to be able to have your own power.
Ooh.
And power is not about ego. I'm not talking about like,
Yeah.
oh, you know what? I know better now. I am better than you, and
Yeah.
no, I'm not
The
speaking.
aggressor, like that's
Yes,
again
I'm
that defense mechanism. Yeah.
no, yeah, I don't want to, have
Hmm.
any misinterpretation here.
Hmm.
I want to make it clear that when you get your power back is because you have your self-love back
And respect. I was gonna
and
say.
respect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when you have that, you can speak through self-love and self-respect.
Mm-hmm.
And in having a strong conviction that you deserve more and that you can have more and that you can have it all.
Ugh.
So when you learn that, you then allow your children to have that form of self-respect,
Mm.
right? So that's how we change the future generations. And that's really what I want to convey is the only change we can really do within ourselves is ourselves. But
Yeah.
it's not, it's not through, an eye with an eye, an ego with an ego, hatred with hatred. That is like the old mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know what? It served us, but we're in 2022
Yeah.
and we're learning a lot more than we learned back then.
Yeah. That's not what's
And
going to serve us going forward.
exactly,
It's like that's
exactly.
what brought us to where we are. um, it reminds me of that saying, anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You're just
Oh,
hurting yourself,
yes.
right? Like living with anger. Um, yeah, that's it.
I love
That's
that.
in
It's
that
so true.
survival place. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's so true. So that's not going to get us anywhere,
Hmm.
right? And so, you hear on the media things still happening to children. Well, what are we doing as moms?
What are we doing as moms? I think that's the perfect place to leave it. I think I ask myself that once a day for sure. What am I
Yeah,
doing?
right.
Goodness.
So all we can do is love ourselves more.
Mhm. Always the answer.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah, love, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Wendy, you have an amazing summit coming up soon that's going
Mm-hmm.
to provide wisdom and healing and support to women
Mm-hmm.
all around the world on these
Thank
topics. Can you
you.
just share a little bit about the summit where I know I'll be a part of it as well?
Mm-hmm.
I'll be sharing about it in the coming weeks on this podcast and in my emails and on social media. But why don't you just
Mm-hmm.
let the audience know a little bit about it and
Yes.
where we can find you after this?
Yes. So we can expect from the Soul Mama Summit, it's equip yourself to heal and neutralize narcissistic abuse, allowing you to heal past pain and go above and beyond abuse, and to find your calm, your joy, and your mental peace. And everybody is deserving of that. And the reason why that came forth is because how I started my journey. And I really feel that the summit is a platform that women, moms can have to see if they resonate with someone that can be guided and led back to their soulness of themselves, to the soul mama of herself, to the true identity of who she is. And it's also a platform to just learn and have awareness of, okay, maybe I'm not ready yet, because sometimes we're not.
Mm.
But if when I am, I have these videos that I can go back, and if I resonate with someone, I can work with that person at a later date.
Right.
And so the platform, what I love that it is virtual right now, because I will be having live ones and virtual. But the virtual part that I love is technology. Anybody from you're in Canada,
Mhm.
I'm in
Yeah.
Texas, and here we are, right?
Yep.
The accessibility that we can transform, you know, a mom like chaotic life to a more soulful mom life, where at the end of the day, the whole goal is for the mom to be happy,
Hmm.
right? And if we can help moms fulfill that, I'm always going to be crusading for this. This
Hmm.
wasn't available for me in 2014. I kind
Yeah.
of had to do my own. And then this year I had that epiphany of this is this is part of my movement in life. And I'm going to keep creating this. So we help the children become healthier, be healthier. The children come and they're born whole and complete.
Mhm.
Everything that they learn is really from us. We're their first spiritual teachers.
Yeah,
And the only way
absolutely.
um, moms are going to heal is within them first. And it's mom's love because we have Mother Earth. Mother Earth, she's a big mom to all of us. And if we can heal and love ourselves first, that's how we're going to save the world.
Mm, absolutely. Oh, I I'm so excited and honored to be part of this summit with you. That speaks to everything I believe as well. And what I try to teach my clients. I work with mainly mothers. I do have a select few
Mm-hmm.
clients who aren't but would like to be, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I just think that's amazing too, that they take these steps now. But yeah, just again, heal yourself, you heal the world. All of that
Mm-hmm.
focus, you don't have to worry about controlling anyone else or what their behavior is
Yeah.
about. Just focus on you, stay in your own
Yes.
lane, and you will make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Let's jump on that
Yes,
choo-choo train because
absolutely. Wendy, thank you so much for being here. I
thank you,
really appreciate
Melissa.
you sharing your story and your wisdom and your guidance with us today. I'm curious to know what the audience's main takeaway was. So please do send me a note on Instagram at Melissa_Giller. And thank you for tuning in. I hope this episode has inspired you to rise above, heal your wounds, and grasp onto a little more tightly your own life with soul. See you next
Mhm.
time.